Thruway. In conjunction with the announcement, I sent a written request to the mayor's office and to the director of planning and zoning, requesting that we include in the new and modern UDC land use classifications and ordinances specific to identifying all known contaminated properties. Such properties pose a hazard to human health. They're never shovel ready and pose a serious threat to Lafayette's water resources, our Vermilion River watershed, the Chico Aquifer, and our municipal drinking water facilities. At least 10 hazardous sites, together with one Superfund site, was flagged to be located within the Tesh Vermilion watershed by FEMA in their 2016 flood assessment report. Many more sites of concern were identified with various site assessments and property transfer audits and in litigation. We need LCG to adopt appropriate classifications and land use ordinances specific to these sites as is necessary for public health and to plan appropriate flood and stormwater management. The contaminated sites are of particular faction, or they are a particular part of any public health for large communities to understand where they are. As mandated by the Environmental Protection Agency by virtue of the Safe Drinking Water Act, our LUS municipal water facility was assessed in 2002, was rated highly vulnerable to the risk of contamination. A particular note was the abandoned rail yard. A wellhead protection area around our municipal water facility was required for posting, signifying a need for added protection. Louisiana DEQ requested that the city adopt EPA-drafted sole source aquifer protection ordinances for the area. Lafayette City Council voted it down unanimously. We need LCG to reconsider ordinances as such in an effort to protect our EPA-designated sole source aquifer. With regard to Freetown zoning, UDC modernization effort has included the rail yard in the confines of the boundaries for rezoning. This too will come eventually come before you all, and I ask that you consider the danger associated with putting this property back into commerce without a complete and comprehensive site assessment and cleanup. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Penn Tompkins.
My name is Penn Tompkins. Mr. Mayor, council members, and Ms. Cook, my representative, thank you for hearing everything that you've heard tonight. I just heard from Ms. Trahan that I had some emotional thoughts hearing that. I'm not as old as Ms. Trahan. I was born November 21st of 1959, so I have a lot in common with you all in that I'd probably rather be somewhere else tonight. But having said that, this issue is too important to not present some thoughts to you. I live in Plantation Subdivision. On August of 2016, on that day, it was raining so hard that I felt sorry for my wife having to go to work. She's got one of those little umbrellas that fits in her purse. And the rain was pouring, and I thought she's going to get soaking wet going from the parking lot into the hospital where she works. So I said, how about if I take you to work? And I took her to work, went over to St. Thomas More High School, talked to a friend of mine who was trying to bail water out of his gym, and then came back to the house before things eventually did flood. But like Humphrey Bogart said in Casablanca, I support no cause other than my own. I lost 2 cars. Each one of those had a $500 deductible. I had a $1,500 deductible for structure, and I had a $1,500 deductible for contents. I spent 97 days in a hotel room with my wife, my mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law's dog. I've been through a lot. There are some sensitivities on the part of residents of Plantation, partially because when fiber optics came through to be installed, it was not going to be installed in any structures that were multi-family dwellings. That's been an issue because when the tax assessor comes through, and you heard that tonight, we are taxed individually on the properties that we have. So there are some sensitivities about living in that area. I have not only myself to worry about, but my job. I have employees in Youngsville where Schmin-Metairie flooded just recently. I have employees in Broussard. Some of them drive from Iberia. And I have employees in Carencro where Veterans Memorial flooded, Hector Conley flooded, and Chief Anderson had to close that area. And I had to consider getting them home safely before I could go home myself. I'm aware of the issues in the parish. For instance, at Dulles and Ambassador, where it has flooded for years since it has been built. I am not a victim of the rain. I am active, but I am not an activist. I did go help other people after this. One woman who was in tears, I asked her, I said, "Ma'am, what is wrong?" She said, "I used to be able to do this for myself, and I can't anymore." I said, "Ma'am, you don't have to. We're here to help." And we did. I would ask one thing and have one petition, one plea for this council, and that is, as you consider all of the options you have in what you will do with the drainage resources available to you as of Saturday, that you please consider repairing and maintenance of the city-owned levee. The city owns the levee around Plantation. That was the only thing that was not brought up tonight, is that is city-owned. It should be city-maintained. You've heard the things that were there. For those things, I thank you. I thank you for your time tonight, and I thank you for listening. Good night.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Christopher Fruget.
Okay. Next speaker, please.
Charles Brandt. He did not indicate whether he wanted to speak or did not wish to speak. You may.
Mr. Mayor, President, and members of the council, my name is Charlie Brandt, and I'm one of the landowners, homeowners at the plantation. I don't live there, but I came to ask today that you help the people that live there to get some drainage and help them with their problems. I went there in August of 2016 to observe my condo, and I had very little damage. I mean, my floors were buckled, the walls were wet, but what I saw when I left was devastation to the people who live there. It reminded me of when I drove through New Orleans and saw what happened after Katrina. There were piles of debris 15 feet high. Debris that consisted of people's lives. Their Venetian blinds, their toys, their belongings, things they had saved for their whole lives were now destroyed. And then it happened again in November. of this year. Something's wrong. And I'm not here to blame anybody. I'm just here to ask for help for the people of the plantation. And not only have they lost their belongings, but the equity in their homes has been severely impacted by the fact that everybody now knows that their homes flood. So we need some help. And I'm not going to take any more time, but I just wanted to put my voice in it. I haven't really lost anything, but I've seen tears, I've seen anger, I've seen frustration of the people who live there, and it's not a pretty sight. So I'm just going to ask y'all to do what you can to help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Bill Blair.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Annette, thank you very much for all your help. I'm one of the plantation people. And just for the record, I want to tell you that my wife and I have a campaign ribbon from the flood of August 2016. But my story just goes back a couple of weeks ago. About 6 or 7 days before November 1st, we just finished putting the last door in the last closet in my home. We went to lunch that day. We thought, man, this is great. No more cube storage, no more work after work. Everything's just going to be fine. Great day. It started to rain. Well, just like everybody else here, we look at the rain and kind of go, oh man, you know, it's not quite so romantic anymore. It's not quite so cleansing. You get kind of nervous. She went off to do some nice errands, fun things. I went back to my office. 4 o'clock rolls around. I'm going through Ambassador Caffrey. And it's the usual flood, you know, high water, everybody's going real slow, that kind of thing. Then I get a call. I said, Bill, I'm really feeling bad, feeling kind of sick. I said, what's up? She said, I'm at the bridge. The water is at the bridge. And I went, well, she's pretty spot on most of the time, but just maybe today, because of last year, that she's just kind of stretching it up a little bit. So 10 minutes later, about 4:30, I roll in. Sure enough, there she is with a couple of other people, some city employees, with a busted pump. The water is at the bridge. I've never been in combat, but every time you go into a situation, your brain starts to flip and going, okay, how am I going to act? Because I'm looking over my neighborhood, the water's at the bridge. So I'm thinking, what do I do? Do I get angry? Do I cry? What am I going to do? And everybody was just sitting around looking at the water. So I decided to walk the levee. I've got to get to my house. By the way, it's the only one we have. It's my summer home, it's the winter home, and it's my vacation home. So I've got to get back there and see if it's going to be okay. So I'm walking the levee, first on the school side. And as I'm walking, the water's rushing, and it's going away. And it's like mud and clay, very dangerous, you know. Get to the park side, walking, and there's 10, 15, 20 foot of that levee that's eroding while the water is rushing inside our neighborhood. And I realized that the coulees on the side are probably 6 or 7 feet deep. The city doesn't say that, but if you stand in the coulee and put your hand up, it's very deep. They have metal pipes with angle iron. I just realized, man, this is crazy. I'm 61 years old. If I fall in this way, I could get cut, get hurt, get drowned, but I could see my house. So I got to my house, opened up the gate. I had 2 foot of grace. Wonderful. Then I checked on a couple of neighbors. Not quite so good, about 5 inches. And when I left, they said, Bill, walk slow, watch the wake, because we all kind of know what that means. So I went out and got my wife at the bridge about 8 o'clock. We walked back. The water in my driveway was probably several inches below my waist. 2016, it was chest high. Anyway, so what I'm telling you is time. Government says everything takes time. We don't have time. That's our problem. Because the rain that we did on the 1st of November, that wasn't a rain event. Rob Perillo didn't say, hey man, you need to go and do high ground. And the gentlemen here, where they bring their cars to the pumpkin patch, well, anytime you hear chance of a slight hard rain and a flood, come to Home 2 and look at the pavilion. All of our cars are in somebody else's parking lot, and they let us do it. We go to work walking to the hotel to get our cars so they don't flood again. We lost 2 cars. Anyway, I'm out of time. I'm just telling you, forget about time. If you were in the plantations, you'd be thinking constantly, what do I do to rectify this problem before it happens again? And it happened November 1st to 50 condominiums. And it's going to happen again. It's a fact. The water's coming from the school side, it's coming from the park side, it's coming from the pad side, and you can see the concrete is right even with the levee. So we all have a serious problem. You as government and us as citizens. So please step up to the plate, but do it now. Just do it fast. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The Diaz.
Is Diaz? Say it again.
Kayla Diaz.
Kayla Diaz. Okay. Next speaker.
Wanda Baptiste. Wanda Baptiste.
Good evening. I made time to come out to let you know that my home flooded not once but twice. My realtor that actually sold me my house in 1997, and I was in New Iberia, I moved to Lafayette. And because I worked in Lafayette, I was driving back and forth. But the same person that sold me my house is my sister that is fighting for her life right now in the hospital. I could have been to the hospital with her, but I sat and I waited. In August 2016, my house flooded. I got over 21 inches of rain in my home. And the reason why I purchased this home, because I had a son that had brain damage, and I took care of him, and I needed the space, so I had nurses. So my home is over 3,000 square feet, and the purpose I purchased it was because I had my daughter so she can have a life, and I had my son so he can have his life in the house, and so I can have my own space too. My son passed away in 2007. My mom passed away in 2008. And I've been through a lot. And November 1st, I was at work on a Wednesday. I received a call from my neighbor, and she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "What are you talking about? I'm at work." She said, "Oh my God, I think you might have water in your house again." I said, "Oh no." So she took a picture and sent it to me. And I said, "No, this can't be happening again." But lo and behold, I left from work running to go and see about my house after we just finished fixing the house this year. I had no flood insurance the first time because I wasn't in a flood zone, and I had no idea. I've been there 19 years. I never flooded ever. And this was my first time in August 2016. I actually called 911 to try to rescue us in the rain, but we didn't get anybody to come pick us up until the next day. But I didn't stay in there because my neighbor next door told me to call, ask us where we were, and he has a 2-story. So he actually let us stay in his 2-story house next door while we walked in his flooded bottom floor. We stayed there as long as we could, and then we had to go into a hotel. I'm in so much stress as to what's been going on. I don't know. I'm just hoping. I'm here as for support. The gentleman that actually showed the pictures in the video, he is my neighbor next door across the street. And when I said I was just so glad to finish the house, didn't know if I wanted to stay there, but I see so many signs out for sale, for sale, for sale. I was like, why? I don't want to just leave. But I was going to do it again. I was going to actually leave after I fixed the house. But I can't leave now because I'm having to deal with floors again. Had to, between seeing about my sister, she's been there 10 days now. and pulling up floors. I have flood insurance. Now I'm fighting with the insurance company. So it's just one thing after the next. So I left the floors alone. I said, forget the floors. So I was at the hospital. So I'm here because I got a letter on my door, and I said I made it my way to be able to be here. But after this, I'm going to see about my sister that actually sold me my home that I needed to care for my children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Chair, she was the final speaker. We did have 70 citizens from various neighborhoods who did not wish to speak but signed in support of a drainage solution for those neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Bellard.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is not just a problem just in Ms. Hebert and Ms. Cook's district. It's a parish-wide issue. In District 5, as Ms. Guest could attest to, it's happened twice to several areas that I represent. For the record, I'm just going to name them so it's in the meeting. Some of the things that were said, and I think what we're going to need to do is get with our mayor president, get with our public works director, get with people on this council, and we're going to have to make a list to prioritize. With the amount of money we have, will everybody be priority number one? No. But we need to sit up here as council members and as the city parish president and decide which is. So for the record, I'd like to list the same subdivisions and homes in my district that I've received call for. Frenchman's Creek, the Glade subdivision, West Broussard, Gateway Drive, Telejean Road, Constitution Road, Bork Road, St. Nicholas, St. James, St. Benjamin's, areas off of Colorado Road, Eugenia, areas off of Duyon Road, Coral Reef area. So just like y'all, I've had town hall meetings, and we do care. I don't want y'all to think we don't. Now that we have some money, we can at least make an attempt to fix what is wrong. I don't have all the answers, but we need to start, and I think this was a good start, and I thank y'all for coming out, because I've seen it, not firsthand, because I did not flood, but I've seen the emotions in the crowd, and I've seen where the emotions can sometimes overtake and put a blame game. And y'all didn't do that tonight, and for that, y'all ought to be applauded. Y'all do deserve us as public officials to fix the problem, but it wasn't in a negative way. So I want to thank y'all for that. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Seems like there's no other council members who is going to speak at this time. We'll now move to resolutions. Again, this is a public hearing, and blue sheets are available for anyone wishing to address the council. The 5-minute rule does apply. Jeremy, can you please read item number 6?
Resolution 50, 2017. A resolution of the Lafayette City Parish Council establishing an exception to the qualification requirements established for the elected fire department representative to the Lafayette Fire and Police Civil Service Board as authorized by Louisiana Revised Statute 33-2476B1C.
Motion by Nakan, second by Bellard. I want to speak to this issue, which I'm against this action, and I would like to share why. I had a chance to briefly talk to one of the authors about reconsidering this action, and it seems as though that it's going to go forward in an attempt to pass. So I'm going to bypass that part of my presentation and maybe hope that some information can be shared as a reminder, as an indicator, and reasons why it should not happen. To begin, one of the things that I have heard is that the fire department wants to be like the police department. In 2011, this same action on behalf of the police department was brought forward and passed unanimously to waive the residential requirement for the appointment to the Police and Fire Civil Service Board. I could tell you that as a 10-year veteran of this council, it is ranked as probably one of the greatest mistakes ever made. And the reasons are very evident. There's significant difference in the way that this issue has been brought forward versus the 2011 issue. In the 2011 issue, I was chairman at the time, and I remember the day that the chief of police, who was in support of this action, Jim Kraft, came forward with a union president, Guy Leberton at the time, who came forward. A resolution and a vote of members of the department, a favorable position by then City Parish President Joey Durrell, and no opposition within the department that is affected. This is not the case this time. This issue is not supported by the Mayor President. It is not supported by the Chief of the department. There has been no vote or resolution of any form or kind to bring this issue forward other than by an individual or a group of individuals. And there is departmental opposition. I would tell the authors and the members of this council that this is not needed nor necessary. One of the most relevant issues in the 2011 issue was that there was no qualified individual to come forward in interest of being appointed to the board at that time. Today in 2017, there are a number of City of Lafayette residents, which is the mandate by law, who have attempted in the past and who are still interested in being appointed to represent the members of the fire department on the Police and Fire Civil Service Board. The City of Lafayette Fire Department. The authors of this resolution, it's very noted and obvious that the majority of the population that they represent is unincorporated and parish residents. And I've had the opportunity to work with them on many occasions. And in every instance, it has been clearly stated that they support the ability to Lafayette City to have its autonomy and to oversee its governance. And I will offer to you today that this issue is a snapshot of what consolidation should be. And that's giving Lafayette its ability, the City of Lafayette, its ability to manage its own issues. Now, we know some may want to try to set it aside. It's not going to happen. We know all of the issues of the Police and Fire Civil Service Board in the recent history. And I want to remind us today of some of the things that were said, and they should be very well noted for the record. The person who is pushing this issue is Jason Boudreaux. He is the current chairman of the Police and Fire Civil Service Board. The only reason this issue is coming forward is because a planned promotion that he has earned is going to force him to have to step down as the representative on the Police and Fire Civil Service Board. And by doing so, they will be forced to appoint someone else. By doing this, it positions this organization to cherry pick the next representative. The action would actually facilitate the handpicking of his replacement. Let me remind you of a few things that happened not long ago. It was said at this council meeting, to this council, and to the public, and said in many, many news releases, that the reason the Police and Fire Civil Service Board has so much power, so much authority, once appointed, cannot be removed, cannot be touched, they're like the equivalent of the untouchables, is because they should not be political. And that political influence should never, ever intervene into their decisions, especially dealing with employees of those departments. I said in response that the Police and Fire Civil Service Board had become more political than any elected body at that time, including this council. Let me remind you that Mr. Boudreaux was the loudest cheerleader for not changing the rules. He said, not this Boudreaux, that Boudreaux said over and over and over again, as it relates to the qualifications for the chief of police that the mayor president wanted, that the most people within the community who participated wanted, that the state examiner who administers the test, and also brought the data to tell us how every other major city in the state of Louisiana do it. That all went on deaf ears. And that Mr. Boudreaux said that we should not change the rules to benefit an individual. But today, there is a consideration to change the rules to benefit an individual. That is the definition of privilege. As privilege has become the new issue in America today, that's it. You cannot have it because I control it. And when I need it, I will apply it and use it. That's what's happening here today. And that's why I'm going to ask that this council really consider the impact on the entire Lafayette as we debate and make this issue. He wants to now change the rules. Mr. Boudreaux, that chairman, Mr. Boudreaux, was the top defender of the comments made by then attorney Candace Hatton about a member of our community. I personally went to the Police and Fire Civil Service Board and asked that action be taken for the sake of Lafayette to not become one of those cities, to not be so obvious and evident on how we treat members of our community. Zero done. Matter of fact, public defense of. This is the person who is asking for our resolution to handpick his successor. Those comments was racist, demeaning, and vulgar. This council had absolutely no ability to do anything about it, and that board at that time chose to do nothing about it, and that person remained in place. This is what we're advocating for. The fire department union, I specifically remember them sitting in my back as I attended that meeting in acknowledging that they were in full support of Mr. Boudreaux. They were in full 100% support of what he was doing and what he had done. And these are the individuals who vote to determine the next representative. So why would we change the rules? Now, let me tell you how bad this really gets. That issue was so important to Lafayette, I wanted to make sure that we pursued any and every option we had to correct the wrongs. I dealt with the U.S. Department of Justice. I dealt with the local U.S. attorney, and I dealt with the district attorney. And I presented to the district attorney a number of questions for individuals who were on this board improperly. And as you all remember, one voluntarily stepped down, one ultimately had to be removed, and one survived. It was Guy Leberton, the police department representative, who was the beneficiary of the last time we took this action. A resident of St. Martin Parish. Let me tell you what is being considered here. When I went to the district attorney trying to utilize everything available for removal of individuals, he responded to me verbally and in writing, and he gave me all the reasons why these actions was not appropriate, that we could not do it for this reason, we could not do it for that reason. I say, okay, we've done our job. But in our verbal conversation, I asked about the people's ability to remove by petition, because in the state statute, there is an opportunity that when things get so bad that the people, similar to all the people that was here tonight, that the people can take action by petition and remove an individual through the courts. And the most horrific information was discovered at that point. That the citizens of the city of Lafayette did not have that authority anymore. That it would have actually taken 25 registered voters of the domicile of where the person stayed. Now let me lay that out for you. If the citizens of Lafayette had become so disgusted with Mr. Leberton behind his actions on the Lafayette City Police and Fire Civil Service Board, they would have had to depend upon 25 people from St. Martin Parish to sign a petition to start the process of his removal. So the idea that the police department had, the only reason the police department resolution hadn't been repealed because the police chief don't want it is because the item had never been brought forward because of things that we have been doing, a lot of which dealt with our police department. There was no thought that there would need to be a rush to prevent the same mistake twice. Members, I beg of you, think about what we are doing and the precedents we are setting. We create privilege. We actually do the exact thing that they refuse to do. We change the rules to benefit an individual, rather than allowing the process to work out. If we just apply their exact logic that they applied when they were in the same position, you would be doing fine in yourself. They simply said, we are not going to change the rules to benefit an individual. And that is exactly what redoing this resolution yet again would do. Allow them to determine and maintain control and remain political and continue to do the things they're doing with that board. Please, please, please do what's right. I actually dreamed about this issue last night. I dreamed about this issue, and the only thing that kept popping, because I was so worked up and just so concerned, I said, why do we have to go down this road in Lafayette yet again? And all I could think about was Lafayette strong. When I see those signs, Lafayette strong, Lafayette strong. Well, here's another test. Is that just a buzz phrase? Is that just a phrase of comfort? Or are we going to take the opportunity to actually live up to it and just do us right and stop right there? That's what I'm asking the members to do here tonight. Just simply do us right. Ms. Cook, you have the floor.
Tough act to follow there. I too have a problem with this resolution from the standpoint of this is a city board, a civil service board for police and firemen. So I do believe that first consideration should go to those, if we're talking firemen here, to those firemen who reside in the city. I do have maybe an offer of an amendment to this resolution where that if in fact there is no one within the city that is interested in this position or that is going for this position, that we can look outside of the city to find someone in the parish. But I do feel that because this is a city board, that we should first look to someone who lives in the city to be considered for this before we start looking outside into the parish. So with a little help from Mr. Escott, he created an amendment. So if you have a copy, if you would read that. You want to read it?
I'm just giving a chance for everybody to read it. It is back and front, by the way. So just as a general summary, as an understanding of what the amendment attempts to do is, all it says is that if there is, as long as, well, let me say it this way. Whenever there is at least one applicant on the police or the fire elected representative position that is either a City of Lafayette resident, registered voter, or Parish of Lafayette resident, then there is no exception to residency. And you cannot elect, obviously, they couldn't even apply if they live outside the Parish of Lafayette. Only when there is no applicant that has applied for the position of the police or the fire representative position is when you can then the exception applies, and you can then elect or appoint a resident outside the Parish of Lafayette. That's what that amendment does. It essentially defaults first to local, and then if nobody local applies, then you have the exception.
Stay at the floor.
Okay, that's.
You want to offer that as an amendment?
I'd like to offer that as an amendment, yes.
Okay. The resolution that was just provided to you by...
Anita.
Yeah. Yeah. You should be on.
Maybe the rain's, okay. I just want to point out that the law, the statute specifically says that you must be a resident and qualified voter of the municipality and parish. So it's not, I mean, the law says the city, not the or parish. So, I don't know, is that, so I'm just saying the existing law says the city. The way that the amendment is and the resolution says you don't have to be from the city, you don't even have to be from the parish. That's the change that was being made. Now the amendment is saying you can be from the city or the parish, or if someone from the city or the parish runs, then no one from outside of the parish can apply. But again, that's expanding the existing statute beyond the city. I just want to make sure everyone's clear.
And I think that's what the intent was. The intent is to honor the law as it's written as a statute today, and then if it defaults, if there is no city of Lafayette resident, then there can be consideration for someone who lives in the parish of Lafayette within the department, and if it defaults beyond that, then and only then can it default outside of the parish of Lafayette.
Well, I'm not sure it reads that way. If I look at the last sentence of the red marked up, it seems like it says you can be a resident or qualified voter of the city of Lafayette or a resident of the parish. It doesn't have the city first. If there's no city, it goes to parish, and if there's no parish, it then goes outside the parish. It seems like the way I read it, it says city or parish. If you're one of those, you're first.
It says.
And if there's none of those, then it goes outside the parish. But I'm going to defer to Paul.
It says no.
That's correct. That's the way it's structured.
Okay. So Ms. Cook still has the floor, and when I think she had shared her intents in one way, it may have gotten written in another way, but she still has the floor at this point to kind of state specifically what she was trying to achieve.
Actually, I don't have it anymore.
Yeah, you on, just yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, my intention was to actually give the city the first, so that basically they would be eligible first, and if there was no one from the city, then we would go to the parish. But I think that's not what you put. It looks like that's what you put when you said, in the instance when there was no applicant from the fire department, police department, elected representative position, then basically it says then a resident would go to the parish of Lafayette. Am I reading that?
And actually, the way I read the statute, as to the two members that are elected from the municipal fire and police departments that we're talking about, their residency requirement under 332476B is the parish. I don't know if y'all don't have access to the statutory language.
It says
I got it in my office. I spent about a whole year on that stuff. Yeah. The resident of the municipality, I'm not sure which one you're reading.
Right.
But I'm absolute in knowing that the way it is written today as far as law is that they have to be a resident of the municipality in which this board serves. And then it goes on to say, because you're not necessarily a voter of the city of Lafayette, like Mr. Andrew Hebert is going to come tell us in a second, you're actually a voter of the parish of Lafayette. So that's where I think the language, you're a resident of the city, but you're a qualified voter of the parish.
You want to give preference to the city of Lafayette first?
That's my intention.
And then the parish, and then if neither, then
we
outside the parish?
Go from there, yes.
Okay.
Or why don't you just go to the floor there? It's not city, then just go to parish.
Paul, go ahead on and work on that, Ms. Cook.
City parish.
They got some other members who want to speak. While he's working on your amendment the way you actually want it, we'll go through and start allowing some additional speakers. Mr. Castile.
Chair, I'm not sure if everyone can hear me, but there's a couple of issues in Mr. Boudreau's statement that isn't correct. I was asked to bring this, to be part of this, because it allows the firefighters a chance to vote for the person they want to represent them in that group. Okay? It got nothing to do with city versus parish. My name's on there because I used to be a fireman, not because I'm a parish guy against the city. That's ridiculous. I put my name on there because I feel everyone in that department should be able to choose their representative. Simple. This is not the President of the United States. This is a board that governs this department. Okay? Now, as far as for cherry picking a replacement, I wish I knew that information. Nobody shared that with me. I have no idea where a cherry pick of a person came from or who it is. Simple. It's a simple process for me. That's why my name's on there, because I was part of the group, part of that organization, and I feel that as a member of that organization, I should be able to vote for who I want to vote for to represent me on this board. It's not a personal attack on anyone. I'm not going after anybody. And you know, whatever Mr. Boudreau did for a whole year, I watched him. He did a great job. No problems. I have no beef with that. This is why my name's on there, because I believe that each member of that department should be able to vote for their representative. That's simple. Now, I see that Ms. Cook has the amendment that she wants to make. And in the title, it has "and police department." So does that include, from now on, the police department is also included in this now?
Yeah.
Okay, what currently happens to the current guy who's serving? He has to serve his term out, or?
That guy's no longer there, Mr. Castillo. The police department recently went through an election, and the person who's in that position now is actually a resident of the city of Lafayette.
All right.
So that no longer applies. So this would just be, this action, if it was to pass, would correct it, and the policy would be the same, because that has been some of the things I've heard, is that one of the reasons was that one department won't what the other department have. So this would give both departments the same thing, but it wouldn't have any impact of a sitting member.
Okay, all right, I understand it. Like I said, that was why you see my name up there, because I feel that I should be able to vote for who I want to represent me on that board. It has nothing to do with consolidation or anything of that. So I could probably support this amendment once we clarify the city and parish resident issue. But let's see how that turns out. That's it for now, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Nakan?
Yes. First off, I'd like to start off and say that the reason my name is on there is not political. It is not racist. It's not cherry picking. Obviously, there is some bad blood between Mr. Jason Boudreau and Mr. Kenneth Boudreau that I don't care to get involved in, nor have a discussion about. I do want to do what's best for both the city and the parish. And I guess my question is, what happens on the fire side of it, currently as it stands, with a new amendment that adds the fire and police? What happens to the guy that's been serving on this board that has been from St. Landry Parish? Does he automatically get kicked out if this goes into effect?
Who is that?
Is there anybody on the board that is outside the Lafayette right now?
The guy on the police department, he already been termed out.
Fire.
The guy on the fire department, I don't know if he's from St. Landry Parish. He can't be, because they didn't have this exception. That's Jason Boudreau.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, there's a lot of things that have been done on this council in my time as well that was brought up at the last minute and had to vote on, and with no consideration. So with all due respect, I'm open, but I do want what's fair. I kind of like the fact that it's goes either or, City of Lafayette or the parish. I don't know why it's such a big deal if it has to be a city resident first versus a parish. But you know what? I want to hear everybody else talk on it. I'm open to suggestions. But if we're going to do it for one, we need to do it for all. And I just wanted to make sure that whatever passes wasn't going to affect any current members. If there's no current members and it's not going to affect anybody, nobody's getting booted out because of it, then I'm open to do what's fair. But this is not my concern or issue if you have something with Mr. Jason Boudreaux or somebody else. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm not a part of that. And I'm not bringing it here or put my name on it because I wanted it to be that. I thought the way it was understood, we were doing what the same thing was done on the city side. That's why I brought it. That's why I offered it, as well as Mr. Castile and well as Mr. Bellard. So while you concerned and you want to do the right thing, then I'm here tonight. And I want it to go around, and I want to make it fair, and I want to be able to understand exactly what I'm voting on, if you want my consideration. Thank you.
And just for the record, I don't have any problem with Jason Boudreaux at all. What I do have is a responsibility to represent Lafayette and to bring forth policy that is fair and impartial and legal and ethical and all other things that you and I are both obligated to. This is not about Jason, this is not about an individual, but what it does put out there, which no one could sidestep, is being consistent. What it puts out there is that we all know with that board, the position they took, and we accepted that. We had to accept that. And we could take the names off of it. The board said, we're not gonna change the rules. Now they're asking this body to change the rules, period. So I don't have a problem with Jason. I don't think Jason have a problem with me. Shit, we share the last name. We might be cousins. I don't know. But as far as doing what's right, it's not an option with me. And as long as I'm on this council, we no longer gonna slip and slide through Lafayette. And that's what's happening, not by an individual. If I thought you were the racist, I'd have said that. I didn't say that. What I said was what that board did in that board meeting and allowed that attorney to say about a black resident of Lafayette, that was racist. I've never known Kevin Nakan to be a racist, never. Love you like a brother. But it's your resolution, and like you say, we're gonna talk about it and we're gonna fix it. But this thing about one family, Lafayette strong and coming together and addressing certain, no. We're gonna start doing this thing the right way throughout. Ms. Cook, while you do that, I'm gonna go to Mr. Lewis. Hold on. Wait a minute, Pat, is reset. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier we had a big conversation. In fact, the audience was packed, people talking about the drainage. But now it's about the council doing the right thing. And it seems to me whenever something is people have a problem with, people want to change it. And I vaguely remember that when we was trying to get Rash to be the chief of police, it was issues, it was problems. And I've been around a long time, I've been on different jobs, and no matter what, you can have all the qualifications you want to have. If a certain group of people don't want you to have that particular job, or don't want you to be at a certain place, they cut you down. And I've only been on this board for about 20, 21 months. And I want to make sure my next tenure, my next years, I want to make sure things are done fairly and equally. And I do know there is problems with what happened with the fire department, fire civil service board, when it comes to hiring the police chief. We have a good police chief now, no complaints with him. But I want to make sure that, I mean, all of a sudden this we have to change, and we have Mr. Cook making an amendment. Why we have to make changes? This is the way it's supposed to be. From my understanding, someone didn't want to change it about a year ago, and now all of a sudden he wants to have it changed for what? I heard a few council members say something about cherry picking and what have it. Maybe not cherry picking, but maybe so. It looks that way. If you ask me, it looks that way. Like something is getting ready to happen that we need to make sure that it doesn't happen, or whatever happens should be the right thing to happen. So I'm urging my councilman that we vote the right way, or let's table it to make sure that we come up with the right thing. Table it and just leave it be. That's all I have to say for now. I'm coming back.
Ms. Hebert?
I just want clarification. I heard it kind of mentioned, but I want to make sure just for my own selfish vote. So I was ready to support it because I was under the impression, as it was explained to me, that the reason that this was bringing forth was to make it consistent, the qualifications and the requirements consistent was already with the police department. I want to get a better understanding and maybe a firm answer of, yes, the police department is doing this already, and this is something that we're just catching fire department up with, or are we bringing, I want to make sure they're both on the equal same standard. So if I can get an answer to that, please.
Yes, the police department.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, the police department does have, by a resolution that was passed in 2011, they do have the ability to elect someone to the Police and Fire Civil Service Board that does not meet the residential requirement by state statute. What this resolution does, it would allow the fire department to do the exact same thing.
Do the exact same thing?
Yes.
Okay, that's because this amendment right here makes that not sound so. Jen, I have one more question. Nope, that's all I'm going to have. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, so there's a question being raised. And it may not mean anything to someone else, but two things have been said here already, which would be a good argument. It would be a good position if it would not have been for the previous actions of the Police and Fire Civil Service Board. For instance, my colleague, Mr. Castillo, very good friend of mine, he brings up a good point. He said this allows for the men of the department, the men and women, the members of the department, to choose the person they want. The mayor asked this same board to allow him to choose the person he wanted, and they told him no. Why do they get to say no, and yet they want us to say yes? That's privilege, gentlemen. Mr. Nakan, I hear you asking, what is the problem? Ms. Hebert just brought up a very good point. This was about being consistent. My God, that was the exact same thing the state examiner said when he went to Shreveport, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, that everybody has a three-tier effect on how they hired the chief of police. And here we are in Lafayette saying, no, you got to have a college degree. So all I'm asking you all to do is to get outside the box a little bit. If we're going to be consistent, why we didn't make them consistent? If we want to give the people who have the authority to make the appointment or the selection the power to do so, why they could tell the mayor no, they want yes. Why they don't have to be consistent, but we want to be consistent on their behalf. That's what's really roughing me up right now, is that we are considering doing something for someone who themselves would not do it. I don't even know what that's called. They're not consistent, Councilman Hebert. They're not. They wouldn't allow the mayor to select who he wanted. Brother Castillo, they didn't. The problem is, Mr. Nakan, when you ask what is the problem, is because it further facilitates the privilege, the control, and the dominance that's been in place for years without creating a balanced playing field. That's what this does. Now, look, I get it. Maybe everyone won't see it. It's the same issue, but that's the response. Mr. Robideau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for the record, it wasn't for me to choose the chief of police. It was just to allow people to apply.
I apologize.
That was, I think it was a much less of a request than allowing me to choose. But as it relates to this issue, I think it's important to back up a little bit. And let me say first that I apologize to the council because I was asked to bring the resolution. And when I researched it, I realized that I didn't like the resolution that the police had gotten because I thought it was really bad policy as it related to the city police. The state law says you have to be from the city. Clear. In the second whereas clause, a resident of the municipality. which would by default mean that you're also a registered voter of the parish that the municipality resides in. And so the state law says that it needs to be the city, and we made an exception to the law for the police because they made the case that no one from the city was applying for the job and they had to fill it. So in that respect, I can understand that the council's in a difficult spot and we're saying we're trying to figure this out and fix it, which they did by saying we can ignore the law and we'll give you this variance. I like what Ms. Cook's saying is, hey, if there's a guy that qualifies, and if I'm wrong about the city or the parish, but if there's a guy that qualifies under the existing state law, then that's who applies, or all of those apply that want the job. And if there's not, then it can be anybody, including outside the parish, which I still have a problem with. I don't think it should ever be someone from outside the parish. I don't think it should be somebody outside the city, much less outside the parish. But I'm not going to even go down that path. This is the city police that we're talking about. I can't dictate at all, even as the parish president, what goes on with the city police of Youngsville or Broussard or Karen Crow. I have no say-so at all. They're a separate municipality that runs their own municipality. And Lafayette, and I see Andy smiling back there, and I see in this case, Lafayette's just giving away that authority, saying, no, it's fine, you can be from anywhere. You can be from Shreveport for all we care, is what the resolution says. And so at least with the amendment, we're saying if there is someone that's qualified, the way the law was written, and that law was written for a purpose, the way the law, if there's someone qualified, then that's who applies, or all of those apply. And if there's not anyone that qualifies under existing state law, then we go outside it. And we don't have to keep revisiting this issue every time it may come up over the course of the next 2 decades, say, hey, we're in this bind, we need to change the rule. Let's just say we'll change it forever. Everybody is under the same, treated the same, police, fire, everybody's the same. I think it's a good solution unless Mr. Escott says he can't figure out a way to write it and it's not a good idea. But I'll defer, obviously, to those guys. And I just wanted to speak my piece on the way I think I interpret the rule change.
Thank you. Mr. Bellard.
Yes, and I can understand the need for the amendment, but what I can't understand, and Mr. Boudreaux, your mic's always hot, like you, we sat by each other and we both just take notes when whatever everyone's saying. So, you know, you said by supporting this resolution, which I'm an author with fellow co-authors, that is advocating racism, vulgar, and maybe your intent wasn't to make it to seem that way towards us, but I did take it that way, just as Mr. Nakhan did. This resolution, as you know, has been up there 2 weeks. If you had a problem with it being that type of problem, I would have expected a phone call. As far as that concerned, I don't think that was your intent. But as one of your colleagues, I want to tell you I took it that way. Sometimes that's your passion, but I'm not those things. And I don't think these other authors are, and I don't think that was our intent of the resolution. On the other side of it, if you're going to make it fair for both, I think that's what we all intended to try to do anyway. So I think in a roundabout way, we're all going to get to what we think is fair. The way that it's went about said, I didn't like it, but I think that was our whole intent. The deconsolidation comment, I know Mr. Hebert's still here. Hey, I'm city and parish, baby. I pay just as much taxes as you in the city of Lafayette, so it might work with those other two, but can't work with me. I am one Lafayette, and that's represented by where I live and representation of who I serve. So I think in a roundabout way, we're going to get to where everyone's fair. Right. That's all I had to say.
Well, I tell you this, Mr. Bellard, if you took it that way, you certainly took it wrong.
I think
for that, I do apologize. Yep. And like I told Mr. Nakhan, and I'm going to be very, very clear about this, the 3 things that I referenced was about what the board did in their board meetings in support of their attorney at that time, okay? That's what I was referencing when I said that. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And things are always different from different views. Lafayette has a race problem, okay? I'm sorry.
Oh, as long as you're not saying I am as the author of it.
I've served with you, I've served with him, I've served with JU and J the longest. Think y'all some cool dudes. Lafayette has a race problem. And what has happened historically is we have set that aside over and over and over again. I understand what Mr. Castile is saying, but you know what? This is the only opportunity we have. It's kind of like the Kaepernick protest. He took it to the biggest stage. This is the only stage I have because no one else talks about it anywhere else. This may not be relevant what has happened in the past in Mr. Castile's views. I respect that. But in my views, I can't ever let it go when I am the victim of those things. So it's just a different view. And for that, I'm sorry, members, but we have to bring these things forward because we are dealing with a 5-member, all-white board. The only diversity that recently came because of the previous actions taken was to achieve getting a female on the board. As I have traveled the state through the Louisiana Municipal Association, this is an issue going on throughout the state. Legislators are now being approached to look at legislation on how these boards are appointed. In Lafayette, just by the appointing body, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette gets 2. The police department, which is a majority white populated department, gets 1. The fire department gets 1. In this council, which only have 2 minority representatives, get 1. There's only been 1 instance in the history of the Police and Fire Civil Service Board that we have had a minority by race serve. Only once. Alton Trahan has attempted to get on this board on 3 different occasions and doesn't stand a chance. And what happens is he is a City of Lafayette resident. So my effort right here today is simply to keep the playing field as is in balance. This will not change anything because the department by majority will still select who they want. But when we start talking about changing the rules by request of a body who refused to change the rules, I have a problem with that. You see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but I said
that's what has brought this forward.
We're coming to the same conclusion.
Oh, yeah. But we wouldn't have come there if I wouldn't have done this, right? Because we would just voted on the resolution.
I'm just saying I'm just being honest and telling you the way I took it.
Yeah.
And I'm not, we can't go read it back to tape. What it was, if you support this resolution, then it's supporting this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the author, one of the authors of it, and that's not what my intent is or was, or should I be accused of those type of things by creating this resolution.
All we got to do is get it right and it goes to sleep.
Well, that's what I told you the first time.
All right. Ms. Cook.
Okay, it's my turn. I just want to say, first of all, I respect all 3 of the authors of this resolution, and I understand their intentions were all good. I just basically had a problem with the representation on a city board and who was going to be filling that position, and that's basically why I'd like to offer the amendment. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I would ask if Paul could give me a little help on actually reading. I think, did you change the language just a little bit, or? Okay. And I'd like to offer this this as an amendment to the resolution.
Your mic is on, Paul.
Okay. As the amendment was provided to you, as written, that is the way that I would recommend we leave it. I cannot recommend that we prioritize over the City of Lafayette resident over a Parish of Lafayette resident. If you have an applicant who is a City of Lafayette resident, and you also have an applicant that is a Parish of Lafayette resident, both can apply and both be voted on to decide who sits. This amendment would say, if you have a City of Lafayette resident and or a Parish of Lafayette resident that applies, you cannot even receive an applicant from outside the Parish of Lafayette. There is no exemption or exclusion or qualification. You have applicants that are within either the City of Lafayette or the Parish of Lafayette, and so you have to take from that pool. And that's what the amendment does.
And that's what I'd like to propose, what he said.
Okay. So, Paul, in your explanation of why you cannot place the City of Lafayette, explain that, please.
Okay. It comes from my reading of the statute. And the statute is, I believe, poorly worded, and it causes some confusion. But if you look at And the statute I'm referring to is 332476, which talks about municipal fire and police civil service boards. Let's just jump to the B1A, okay? Says to be eligible for appointment or to serve as a member of a board, a person shall be a citizen of the United States of America, a resident of the municipality, okay, so we're talking about the city of Lafayette, in which he is to serve for at least 5 years, next proceeding, and it goes on. All right, so that, you would think, that's easy. You got to be a city of Lafayette resident. Then you go to subpart B, and it says, however, with respect to the 2 members elected from the municipal fire and municipal police departments, which is exactly the members we're talking about, right? 2 of the 5-member board. Such members shall be residents of the parish in which the municipality they are to serve is located. It doesn't say the residents of the municipality, it says the parish. So those 2 members, the way I read the statute, only require Parish of Lafayette residency, not City of Lafayette residency. Now here's the confusing part. You go to subpart C of the statute, which is the exact provision that you guys are using to provide for an exception to the residency requirements, and this is the language that allows you that power to do that, okay? It says, notwithstanding the provisions of subparagraphs A and B, which is the ones I just read to you, the 2 members elected from municipal fire and police departments